Hello, and welcome to another edition of Segue, the show that allows us to talk about issues and ideas here on the campus of Southern Illinois University Edwardsville. I'm Kevin Leonard, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm very pleased to be here today with Dr. Bill Retzlaff, Interim Vice Chancellor for Administration. Dr. Bill attended Auburn University, where he earned his bachelor's degree in forest management and his master's degree in forestry. He earned his PhD in forestry from Clemson University. After working as a postdoctoral research associate for several years, Dr. Bill joined the SIUE faculty as an assistant professor of biological sciences in 1999. For many years, his research has focused on the evaluation of green roof and green wall technologies, sustainable green infrastructure, and sustainable use of residual waste products. In 2017, Dr. Bill earned the university's highest academic rank of Distinguished Research Professor. From 2010 to 2022, he served as Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. During this time, Dr. Bill was responsible for managing space and facilities. He represented the college in the planning and oversight of the construction of two new buildings, Art and Design West and Science West, both of which were dedicated in 2013, and the renovation of Science East, which was completed in 2018. For many years, Dr. Bill oversaw scheduling and enrollment. In the spring of 2020, he worked tirelessly to move all instruction online, and in the summer of 2020, he put in hundreds of hours adjusting the fall schedule so that faculty could teach and students could learn safely during the pandemic. He moved into his current role in the university administration in October of 2022. Welcome to Segue, Dr. Bill.
Welcome. Thank you, Kevin. Very nice for you to say that for me.
Well, let's begin by having you tell our audience a little bit about yourself. How did you become interested in forestry?
So, going back to high school, I took, as an elective course in high school, two classes, a botany course and a field ecology course. And the high school teacher was a summer National Park Service employee and worked in the Sandia National Forest as part of the National Park System and National Forest outside of Albuquerque. I really enjoyed working in those classes with him and leveraged that into going back to Auburn and getting a degree in forestry.
Oh, okay.
Now, when I started that, I wasn't quite sure where I would end up, but it has served me well over the years.
Okay. So you I didn't realize that you had actually worked in the National Forest outside of Albuquerque.
Yes, very briefly.
Okay.
As kind of a summer help.
Sure.
It was a lot of fun. I spent more time in the woods when I worked for what used to be St. Regis Paper Company, which got bought out by Weyerhaeuser and then ultimately by International Paper. I also worked for the U.S. Forest Service in the Sipsey Wilderness area in the Free State of Winston in Alabama. Winston was the only county in Alabama that did not secede in the Civil War, and so they called it the Free State of Winston, the county.
Oh, okay.
But I worked in that national forest, the Bankhead National Forest, for 9 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so how did you decide, though, that you wanted to become an academic biological scientist rather than working out in the field in the forest?
Also an interesting story. But also ties really well with my roles here. So as an undergraduate student, my first couple of years were, well, I would say uneventful. My dad would not, right? But, I was moving through the progress. But in my third year, I was asked to work with a faculty member in the Department of Forestry at Auburn on basically a water study of performance of seedlings under different watering regimes, and they were all genetically selected trees. So in simple terms, we weighed a lot of milk cartons with trees growing in them, and I really got interested in research, and I leveraged that to get into the graduate program in Auburn in the Forest Nursery Management program, where I was still working on small trees, and then went to Clemson and worked on climate change issue with trees and got into air pollution after that in my postdocs, and kind of came full circle back here and started working on climate issues and ultimately ended up in green buildings.
Oh, okay. So were there important individuals who encouraged and supported you as you pursued your career in the academy?
Yes, a number of them. I have to honor my parents. Both of my parents had master's degrees. So, when you're challenged by your family, I went on for a PhD partly because they didn't have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was first. I had a wonderful master's advisor, Dr. David South. I was in what was called a nursery management cooperative with 63 state and industry partners with lots of mentors that I reported to because my project was funded by them. Lots of motivation there. At Clemson, my PhD advisor, Ansel Miller, was also very good. And then my postdoctoral advisor at Clemson, John Kelly, Larry Williams at UC Davis, and then David, Weinstein, at the Boyce Thompson Institute for Plant Research at Cornell were all very instrumental in supporting me, encouraged me to publish and work with others.
Well, I always like to ask that question when I'm interviewing faculty, in part because it helps our listeners to understand how important it is to work with people and how nobody gets to where they are without a lot of support and mentoring. So,
I would not be a distinguished research professor here without all of the collaboration that I've had amongst the faculty that are on our team that work on green infrastructure, all of the graduate and undergraduate students that have worked on the projects. I just don't have enough hours in the day to do it. But as a big team, that's really made it possible.
Absolutely. So could you tell us a little bit more about how you became interested in green roofs and walls?
Very interesting story there as well. There was a faculty member here in physics named Dr. Lenore Horner. And her area in physics, if I remember correctly, was in lasers and photonics. She also worked in kind of the education area. But one day she reached out to me and said that she had heard of a really interesting green system on top of buildings, and someone had asked her about whether they thought that it was practical. She put me in touch with that individual, and Susan Morgan and I went and met with them and looked at a laptop on the hood of a pickup truck, basically. And they were showing us their system, and they wanted us to test it to see if it was the best green roof system so they could sell the product. And we told them, probably can't do that, right? As a university entity, we can't promote your product. But if you're our research partner, we'd be happy to use your materials in our research studies, have our students evaluate the plants and the media and the system and the stormwater retention and all of that. About 3 years in, our guys that owned this small company in St. Louis, Green Roof Blocks, were talking about SIUE, all the students that had worked on their projects, how important the data was. And in fact, it got to be such an important thing for us, we were asked by the national roofing contractors to actually do a wind evaluation test of green roof systems here on campus. Turns out we have a wind tunnel. And so we put the systems in the wind tunnel, and now the National Building Code contains data from our research project basically saying, don't put these too close to where hurricanes are and hope that a tornado does not come by. But under normal wind conditions, a green roof is a perfectly acceptable roofing methodology, right? So it was a learning process for us, for our students, and also for the companies that we worked with.
Sure. Well, that's great to hear. There's a lot I didn't know about the early days of the green roof research here on campus. So before you moved into the College of Arts and Sciences as an associate dean, you spent 11 years as a faculty member in the Department of Biological Sciences and in the Environmental Science program. So what stands out in your memory about those years?
Well, if we put aside for a moment that I moved into a building that was 50 plus years old and not quite so nice, but the camaraderie amongst the faculty, the opportunity to work hands-on daily with them, with the students, to to have the opportunity to be a scholar in the classroom and not just present rote materials, but actually to talk about things that we were doing. I tell my friends and colleagues all the time, teaching is an interesting arena. I could take textbooks that were developed 15, 20 years ago, prepare lecture materials, augment them, but compare that to a class where we're doing laboratory exercises and we're actually working on modern technologies. It makes a big difference. Mm-hmm. And so those are really fond memories for me. Probably the best was not that I was the chair of biological sciences, but while I was the chair, I was able to get everyone together, work with the chairs of the other STEM disciplines, math, chemistry, environmental science, physics, and get a good plan together for the new science building here and the renovated old science building that I was so glad to move my office and lab out of and get renovated. It took us a long time to get there, but just being a part of that was really important. Yeah. And now I can point to that science building and say, I did that. Team. But it's still today a wonderful addition to the campus and really strengthens our programs here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think we have first-rate facilities in the sciences here.
I learned a lot about the arts in that kind of transition to the Associate Dean's office. You're probably going to ask me about that. But right in there, we built the new Art and Design West and then renovated Art and Design East, or the original Art and Design building. And those were challenges in themselves. Especially Art and Design East, because it was supposed to be a 3-story building and the state ran out of money, and it ended up being 2, and there was all kinds of changes to the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. But now we have a world-class art facility here as well.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
yeah. No, I enjoy spending time in Art and Design East. I'm over there pretty frequently. So I do want to talk to you about your time as Associate Dean. But first, I want to ask you what it meant to you to be promoted to the university's highest academic rank, Distinguished Research Professor, in 2017.
Yeah, it was certainly an honor. Somewhat unexpected. We've been friends for a long time. I do my best at my job, and I try not to seek accolades. I'm just trying to do my job and support everyone else. I knew that I had a good research record. I wasn't sure if I was at that level. I was thrilled when I was asked to put my name in, and did, and I was more thrilled when I received the award. Much like being an assistant, associate, and professor here, now that I'm a distinguished research professor, I've achieved the highest academic rank here. It's important to me personally. It, I think, speaks to the capabilities of an institution to support individuals to strive to be their best. And a lot of other schools, there's not a possibility like that, right? There are individual scholar awards, but it's not the same. Right. We also, as you know, have a distinguished teaching award as well, right? And I think that's also a pathway for our faculty to excel that others don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well, thank you for that. So I did mention that you served as an associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences for 12 years. Our listeners may not know exactly what an associate dean does. So why don't you tell us what the work of an associate dean involves?
Good. That's good. That's very good. So let me just say at the beginning, interestingly, I have been here long enough that I have been through, I don't want to say it that way, but I have worked with every single dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. The founding dean was here when I was hired. Mm-hmm. So all the deans, because you're the current one, and I was in your office in September, right? So for me, it's been a learning experience. I stepped up to be a chair, and that was really my first engagement beyond knowing there was a dean's office as a faculty member and asking questions of them, seeking funding and that, but became more one-on-one as a chair, and even more when I became an associate dean. So my first role as an associate dean, because I was a distinguished research professor, or on the pathway for that at the time, was for research. Because when I first got into the dean's office, there were 3 associate deans. Later, that evolved into everything about space, because I'd done the science building and building and all the facilities things that went with it, along with the research and then all the assignment of classes. Interesting, they all parlay together and we have to work around them. But I've said this many times, so no secret. Lots of my friends, if they listen to this, will tell you the majority of what I did was in that last column on my job description that said other duties as assigned, right? So whatever came up, whatever things we were doing, I was partnering with the other associate dean, the director of business affairs, director of development, and the dean to help the college move forward.
Yeah. So what are some of your fondest memories during your 12 years of service to the College of Arts and Sciences?
Hit on a couple of those, but I'll elaborate. Cutting the ribbon on the science building, especially after the governor had shut down the project for 2.5 years. Figuring out how to keep the Science West lecture halls open during that time period. 4,000 students go in and out of those doors of those 2 lecture halls every week, and just being able to keep that project going. Working with the deans and the chairs on a group basis, but also one-on-one on kind of the day-to-day activities, trying to find successes for each of the units in the college and to support the mission of the institution. Really key for me.
So I do want to talk about, of course, I became the dean in July of 2020. We were in the midst of the pandemic at that point. And you oversaw the changes to the course schedule for the fall and for several successive semesters. So tell us a little bit about what that was like for you.
It was a challenge, right? So if we go back to March of 2020, when the world was gripped with the first parts of the pandemic and the universities were trying to, and K-12, figure out how to finish school for the year. Basically, over a weekend, we determined here that we were going to teach everything online and teach out our classes. And that was a challenge on many fronts, just identifying would we be able to do it, because we have laboratory studios, all of that, whether all of the faculty and the students had the technology to be able to do that remotely. So that was the first challenge. And then we had already registered for summer and fall classes, and we tried to determine if we could continue in the summer remotely, a hybrid model. We determined 2 or 3 different things to do, and we began planning the revision of the fall with multiple changes, throwing in there testing, new vaccinations. There were days where I was processing 400 to 500 emails to get that done, hundreds of hours, and everyone else was the same. When you're scheduling classes for 7,000 seats every semester, fall and spring, it's a challenge under normal circumstances. But then trying to make sure that the advisors know this is what we're going to do. The students understand their schedule's not changing, but they're going to be this format or that. And then having the faculty on board to be able to deliver it was a big challenge.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you did a wonderful job, although I know you were working very long days.
Yes.
and every day of the week in those.
Now, I would also say I think it was kind of it was a wake-up call for everyone, but it was a learning experience for the institution. We have online courses and certainly online programs, but now we understand there are some different things that we can do to enhance the learning of our students that we weren't doing before. Mm-hmm. And we kind of tipped over the edge because there's a resistance to change sometimes. But this change came on us and we didn't have a choice.
Right.
I think there are opportunities, and I see some of them now that we've learned from that we're leveraging in our teaching going forward.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing to come out.
Oh, I agree. I think we learned that we could actually move much more quickly than we thought we could.
Yes.
In some respects, although it still is challenging as we've sort of returned to a mode that looks a bit more like the pre-pandemic times than pandemic learning. And I think we may have lost some of the flexibility that we demonstrated in the midst of the pandemic. So what do you miss most about your work for the College of Arts and Sciences?
So I walked into this building today. It's the first time I've come in here since October, moving over to my new office in Randleman Hall. I stopped in and saw the chair of theater and dance and mass comm. In the College of Arts and Sciences when I worked there, it was about every other week that I would go through our building, different buildings, depending on what job I was going, just to have contact with the students, faculty, and staff. And now, where I am now, if they come into the building or I pass them as I'm going out at midnight or coming in at 6 a.m., I see them, but it's a different experience,
sure.
Right? And so, the college faculty, the students, the staff were very welcoming to me. They still are. I just don't see them as much.
Yeah.
And I miss that.
Sure. I certainly understand that. So what has been the most important skill for you to develop as a university administrator?
So I guess my background skills, I'm able to manage multiple tasks. Somehow, whatever genetic characteristic or whatever I picked up, I can do that. And my attention to detail is, and being able to stay focused, has been a real plus for me. And then, the college is large number of faculty, large number of students, served students from the other schools. Just having that knowledge has been really important for my new role here.
Yeah.
Being able to understand where we were in 1999 and where we are today and the things that have changed has made a big difference in how I've been able to manage things in my new office.
Sure. So you mentioned, and I certainly mentioned in the introduction, and you just referred to the fact that you're currently serving as the interim vice chancellor for administration. What does the vice chancellor for administration do?
So my direct reports are the chief of police, and of course the police department at SIUE is under me. Human resources, so the director of human resources, the director of administrative services, which includes, and this is the one that'll get me in trouble, parking services, right? I have planning and budgeting, and then financial affairs. Was that 6? I think I named all 6. Facilities management is the 6th one. So I think if you just tried to put overarching, I'm responsible for all of the capital assets of SIUE, East St. Louis, Alton, and now soon to be Belleville, our new location. And then the human capital as well, because HR is under me. So, kind of big.
Mm-hmm. So what do you enjoy most about your new job?
The most rewarding part, let's put it that way. The most rewarding part is when we have a success that provides either opportunity or a solution to a longstanding issue on campus. So trying to work through, here we have a remote work policy and an alternate work policy. And they're not really melded together, and there's actually two pathways to select them. I'm working with HR and the vice chancellors to streamline that into one form. You could either request one or the other or some combination of both, that we can provide the best working opportunities and also assure that the work is getting done and offices are covered during the working days. Those are wins. Sorry. I am thrilled that we're on the verge of signing a contract for our health sciences building. And so I will be able to, I hope, take us to the ribbon cutting on that building, because I think it's a critical next step for the institution to move forward. And I'm pleased about that. I'm also rewarding just being able to support everyone I can on campus to success is very important.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I guess I would describe your responsibility as a lot of the things that nobody sees, except, of course, the buildings, but a lot of the behind-the-scene activities that have to happen in order to make the university function. And so some of what you're responsible for, I think, is invisible to those of us who walk the campus, but it's really critically important, because without the people maintaining the buildings, cleaning the buildings, and all the people making sure that people get paid and
42 sworn officers that provide safety and security as a university police force here, often overlooked into what they do and that. So yes, you're right. There's a lot of behind the scenes.
Right.
What color things are, whether we have opening windows or closing windows, and everything. Right. It comes to my office.
Yeah. So I always like to end my interviews by asking my guests to offer some advice to our listeners. So what advice would you give to a student who's interested in studying at SIUE?
I would tell a student here that there is a lot of opportunity. I would ask that they dream big and try to think of going to college as an opportunity to prepare themselves for life, not just in the learning, but also in the collaborative nature of working with others and understanding what that means. I would tell them that we have an incredibly safe campus. It's beautiful. If you can manage the geese and the deer, you're in really good shape, right? But there are a lot of opportunities here. And I think that the faculty and staff here are wonderful at supporting the students. So I think it's a great opportunity for them to get to know us and us to help them.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like great advice. So thank you so much, Dr. Bill Retzlaff, for talking with us about your personal experiences, your teaching, your research, and your years of administrative service to SIUE. I look forward to further conversations with you. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us. Stay safe and take care.